Welcome to Wild, Wacky, Wonderful Humans. This is the podcast that celebrates the quirks, the courage, and the brilliance of being human. I'm your host, Jeanene Tracy, transformational coach and curious explorer. Let's dive in and uncover the magic of being wonderfully human. My next guest is someone who's been shaping some of the biggest moments on screen from the other side of the camera. Valerie McCaffrey is a Hollywood casting director who's worked on over 100 films, including American History X, Babe, Hard Candy, and so many more. She discovered Elliot Page, she gave James Cromwell the role that changed his career, and she cast Ed Norton in the performance that earned him an Oscar nomination. Valerie is the kind of person who fights for what's right. She truly does, even when it's not the most popular choice. And because of that, she has changed lives. But this chat's not just about casting. We talk about how she grew up in Fresno, where her Armenian parents ran a diner across the road from the local high school, and inadvertently ended up becoming neighbourhood counsellors. They helped the teenagers at the school through some pretty tough times. We also dive into the story of how a World War II tale passed down from her uncle became her short film, Dirty Bomb. She's also actually in pre-production for that to make it a feature film, so that's pretty exciting. Watch this space. We even touched on the role that she played in changing organ transplant laws in Armenia. Incredible. Ooh, you'll love this story. She talks about when she called Kiefer Sutherland's agent, yep, you got that right, to track down her adult daughter while her daughter was completely oblivious on a fun date. That's a great story. Gave me some giggles, that one. Oh, wait a sec. I think I've got another favourite story she told. She was put in charge of guarding a very special plant on the set of Cheech Chong. Now, she had no idea what type of plant it was, and I'm sure you can guess, right? This episode is full of wisdom, honesty, and some truly good stories. I absolutely loved this conversation. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Wild, Wacky, Wonderful Humans. I have an incredible human with me today. I'm going to read your bio out because it's just so intensive. Valerie McCaffrey is my guest today. She's a powerhouse casting director. She's a producer, a writer, a director, all of that stuff, multifaceted. She's shaped some of the most iconic performances in film. She's been the VP of feature film casting at New Line, Fine Line, from 94 to 2000. She cast American History X, which I love this. This is an incredible story, Valerie. She, obviously with Edward Norton as one of the stars in that one, he got an Oscar nomination for that one. She's cast The Legend of 1900 with Tim Roth. At Universal, 86 to 94, she cast the global hit Babe and worked closely with Amblin Entertainment. I'm only a third of the way there, Valerie. This is such a comprehensive bio. I love it. She discovered Elliot Page in Hard Candy, which triggered a bidding war at Sundance. Hard Candy, wow, what a film. Incredible, right? I want to talk about that too, about how you came about casting then Alan, right? And that film and how tenacious you were about that star to be the star. She's produced award-winning films including Neo Ned, Jeanene, which you're traveling a lot to promote at the moment, right?
Yeah,
I want to talk about that one too. Not Another Church Movie with Jamie Foxx, Lost and Found in Armenia, which is very close to home for you. She's currently in pre-production on Kaya, a sci-fi action film with Spartacus director Rick Jacobson. That sounds intriguing. Valerie co-directed the documentary Cancer, It's in the System, and I remember this one all too well because you were in Australia and Sydney and you did an interview with someone at the time for that film. That's a really impactful film. She sits on the board of the world, as if this isn't enough, right? She sits on the board of the World Children's Transplant Fund. That's a mouthful. Where she helped change Armenia's laws around organ trafficking. That's incredible. We'll touch on
Hmm.
that too, hopefully. She's also spent years teaching drama to at-risk youth through the LAPD Jeopardy program. Again, how much more can you fit in a lifetime, Valerie? Oh,
More.
yeah, so much more. So you got so much more to go, haven't you? Yeah, how much more are you going to cram in? She's a fearless storyteller. She's a passionate advocate. She's written several screenplays, including The Space Between Men and Take Back. Welcome to Wild, Wacky, Wonderful Humans, Valerie McCaffrey.
Oh, well, nice to see you. It's been a while.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
It's
You
incredible to
haven't changed
see.
a bit.
A couple of wrinkles here and there.
Not much.
A bit more
Very
wisdom.
good.
Life does that to you, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, Valerie, you're currently in LA. We're in Australia, so we hear a lot of news about America. You guys have been through a tough time lately, recently with the fires, which was so close to home for you too, weren't they? It's incredible when something of that scale happens, how it brings the community together and it shines a light on the things that we have and the things that we lose. And I think if we put it into perspective, we start to understand how grateful we can be for the things that we actually have, the place that we live, the place that we call home. How did you how did you respond to that experience?
Well, luckily, my house was not touched by this. But of course, when you live in LA, you have friends that are experiences tragedy, and you also have people that you don't know have experienced this tragedy. And what I did was to just kind of give back to what I could help is, I gathered clothes around the neighborhood. Um, I went to, I bought some waters for the firemen and just getting the community together and then go to the donation sites and drop them off so that you realize people lost their clothing, they lost everything. So, um, so that's what I did. And then what was so great about Los Angeles is that I not only did that, but many people did it to the point that donation centers weren't even accepting any donations anymore.
Oh, wow.
And
That's
so that
great.
was really great to see that everybody, no matter if you were affected by the fires or not,
Yeah.
that contributed something to this tragedy. And then, of course, I had friends and there were active friends that I had that lost their homes. And, even though it doesn't happen to you, it totally affects you. It
Mm.
affects you so much because you look at like you were saying before, you look at your home and you think, I take it for granted that I come home every day and I open the door and I walk in, but you look at it and you go, I've got my house, at least I got a roof over my head. And, there were people that I know, an actor that I know just a couple days ago told me he was in his apartment in Pasadena and he woke up to smoke in his apartment. And for several months, he's been suffering with neurological and respiratory problems. So he was in
Wow.
the hospital. So even the people that didn't have, homes per se, were affected by the people that lived in the apartments.
Yeah, wow. And that's an ongoing impact too, isn't it? So
Sure.
it's really interesting because my last guest that I interviewed, we talked about grief, and she was saying that when somebody loses someone, it's really important to 6 months later, 12 months later, to check in on them because at the beginning, there's all of this flurry of attention, I guess, and then it dies down, right? So I wonder if it's the same for these people, checking in 6 months later, 12 months later, just to see how they're doing. Because in the initial flurry of the loss, it's a shared loss. And then I guess later it can feel quite individual, right? You can feel quite isolated. So I guess that's
And
still to play out.
yeah, the thing is, having to deal with rebuilding your home and the stress of that, dealing with contractors and permits. And I know a lot of actors do not want to leave Los Angeles for that reason because they're in the middle of just rebuilding their home. Most of the time, most people that I know are rebuilding. They
Wow.
can't afford, it's not financially smart to try to find another house to live in to buy at this point in time. So,
And there must be a bit of
yeah,
a shortage in that region too, right?
absolutely. Absolutely.
Which
So,
hopefully it
yeah.
doesn't push the prices up because that's generally what happens is when there's a shortage, it becomes more expensive, right?
That's what is happening.
Oh
Uh,
no, that's not good.
but we're trying to, there are watchdogs that are watching that where, landlords are, charging double for rentals
That's
because they know
incredible.
they can.
It's amazing, isn't it, how people capitalize on people's pain or people's
I
loss.
know.
It's just
So
really sad.
terrible.
Yeah. And it takes a certain type of person to do that. There's
Oh, yeah.
far too many of these
Not-
people in our society taking advantage of people who are at loss. Yeah.
yeah, not somebody that I would want to know.
No, exactly, exactly. So speaking of people, you grew up in Fresno in California with
Yes,
your family, and
yes.
your parents owned a restaurant. What type of restaurant did they own?
It was like a little diner across the street from the high school that I went to.
Oh
So
wow.
my parents kept very young. They were very with it. You
Okay.
know, I'd walk in and my mom would be dancing. They had a jukebox, and my mom would be dancing with a student that I knew. I'm like, Mom, what are you doing? And it's like, wait, well, Mom, can you turn the music down? And it was just like crazy growing up like that.
Wow.
But my parents really began to understand the youth and their struggles, and they were responsible for so many of the kids graduating high school
Oh, why is
because,
that?
yeah, they would listen to their problems, they would advise them. And then sometimes, it was during a lot of the times it was during the period of reds and uppers and downers. And my parents would see them walk across the street, and my mom would say to my dad, Hey, Vern, look at Sydney's coming over and he looks high. And so the worst punishment that you could do at my parents' restaurant, Burns, was get kicked out of Burns because
Oh,
my
wow.
dad would come out and said, "Come back in a week when you're straight, and never come back here high again."
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, so my parents were really, they had a smaller little drive-in first, and I remember my parents going into the restroom at the restaurant, just grabbing the drugs from the kids and flushing it down the toilet.
Wow.
Oh yeah,
Wow.
there was
And
crazy stuff going
did
on.
these kids change their behavior because of
Oh
it?
yeah, oh yeah,
Wow.
yes. And then when there was graduation time, they would write my mom and dad, letters and cards and gifts. And if it wasn't for you, we would have never made it.
That's incredible. Were you at the
Mhm.
time, because as teenagers, we're kind of like, we don't want to be seen with our parents or we don't want our parents
Yeah.
to be, influencing other people around us. Did you have that feeling at the time or were you on board with this? How did that feel
Oh
for you?
yeah. I was, because what happened is that the counselors across the street would think that my parents were advocating this. And so, here I was. I mean, I was homecoming queen. I was a cheerleader. I got straight A's. I was involved in all the activities, right? And they would look at me, go, "You can't be Vern and Virginia's daughter, because you're out there advocating for all of this." And in fact, it was complete opposite. And it was really funny because at one point, my dad actually kicked one of the counselors, my high school counselor, off the property. And I'm like, "Oh my God, you've
Oh
got to be kidding!"
no. That's
But he was like,
funny.
You're get off my property. You don't, you know, this is not for you to be hanging around my business.
Good
But
on
yeah,
them. Yeah, that's great that they
yeah,
actually stood for something, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and
wow.
they love the kids, and my mom was love love people, so
Yeah.
it's
Do you think
great.
what do you think you gained from that style of parenting? Is there anything that you've picked up that you carry through in your life or behavior that you have towards others that you learned from your parents?
Yes, a couple of things. When I would do something wrong, whatever it was when I was younger, my dad never spanked. He just said, "Okay, get a piece of paper out and write." 25 times, I will not do this. And then if we did it again, it would be 50 times, and then it would be 100 times. So what's funny is that I did that to my children, right? And now my daughter is doing it to her children. So, and
Multi-generational
yeah,
lines.
I remember I used to hate that, and I
Yeah.
remember go, and then one time I wanted to use carbon paper, so I would
Yeah,
beat it.
yeah. You know what I used
But
to do, Valerie? I used to offer to
but
do people's lines because I loved it. We used to get that punishment in school. I would
really,
tie three or four pens together and then write four lines at a time. I loved
oh,
it.
that's great too.
Yeah, it was
That's
so
very
fun.
artistic.
So you could whisper that to your grandkids. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
How
that's
funny.
incredible. And what
Yeah.
else do you think you learned from your parents? Either what to do or what not to do? Not necessarily as a parent, but just in society as well.
I have a lot of empathy for people going through struggles, especially younger people. I That's why kind of I taught drama to inner city kids, not only because I knew that there was struggling going on in Los Angeles at the time with gangs at that time, and I just and and part of uh it's not just these kids are like, they want to get in trouble. It's just that, a lot of times their parents have were ex-gang members. There was a 12-year-old girl who lived in Los Angeles, born and raised, never saw the Pacific Ocean. And most of these kids that are in these particular situations don't ever leave their 4 block radius. So it was great because I saw one of them that grew up to be in his 20s, and he ended up, because of my class, ended up owning a costume rental place.
Oh,
And
wow.
because I
That's
used to,
beautiful.
even though I taught them drama, I also taught them about lighting and watching movies and looking out for the costumes and what people were wearing. And we talked about certain things and certain aspects of filmmaking, and that broadened their horizon. And then accountability to someone. So a lot of these kids don't have that with parents or sometimes even teachers. So there was one particular student that I had who came to me and said, I didn't memorize my monologue. And I said, oh, so do you know where your Nikes are? I bet you know where your Nike shoes are, but you don't. Oh, because you lost your monologue. And I said, well, then I'm kicking you out of the class. And he said, what? Kicking me out? I said, yep. Go over there. That's your police officer, because the police officers used to bring these kids
Oh,
from
wow.
different parts of Los Angeles. And so he ended up speaking with his police officer, and I was watching. And he came over, he said, I'll do the monologue now. And so
Oh,
he was,
wow.
whether he was testing me or he just was feeling like, I'm more powerful, I can do this, and you're not going to do anything about it. And,
Mm.
um, he ended up staying in the class because he did what he was supposed to be doing. So,
I guess it's pretty hard, isn't it, to like as a kid is growing up, testing the boundaries and for
mm,
them to have some kind of control in their lives because especially I guess these kids probably don't have a lot of control in their lives at all. They're going from day to day, not even knowing if they're going to eat today. And
yes.
it would be very challenging for them to work with an adult where they don't really know where the boundaries are. And so I guess they'd probably try and push the boundaries, especially when it comes to control. Did you find
Uh-huh.
that in the class?
There were a couple, we
Mm.
were at Universal, we were at Universal, I was teaching at Universal. And all of a sudden, I hear some ruckus outside, and it was like one of the people that was working in the building, who was a employee, went into the bathroom, and one of those kids were smoking weed in the bathroom, and I'm like, oh
Oh
my God!
no.
And then the police officers got involved because there were several police officers right there.
Yeah.
He went in and he goes, "You are in trouble, and blah blah blah." And the kid was really a good performer. And he goes, "Well, you're getting kicked out of the program." I said, "Please," because every 6 months I put on a show for the industry. I said, "Don't take him. Can't you arrest him after the fact?"
Let him do the show first.
Let him do the show first because he was so good, you know?
Right.
It's always
Wow.
those naughty ones that end up being the more creative ones, right?
Yeah. Well, I guess they're kind of stuck in a place too, aren't they? And, a kid doing that, again, there's a reason for their behavior. They're soothing themselves or they're, calming themselves down, whatever it might be. It's must be just such a difficult place to grow up, in that
Yeah,
turmoil and
yeah.
that chaos. It must just be so challenging for these poor kids. It's amazing that you had that program in place. Did the kids want to be there?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, they did?
Oh, yeah. They
Wow.
loved being there.
Oh, that's
And they were
awesome.
like from 10-year-olds to 16-year-olds.
Oh, wow.
So,
That's
yeah.
incredible.
And these kids were chosen because they were, on the verge of possibly going into a gang.
Yeah,
So,
wow.
they taught them before that.
That's incredible. What a great program. It's
Yeah.
so good. There's so many of these types of programs available in the world. In Australia, I know we have a lot of social development programs available for kids at risk and all different types of groups of people. It's pretty incredible when people come together and provide a service because they're passionate about it, generally, is how it comes about, right? They
Yes.
feel for that group of people and so they want change for that group of people, and that's how it comes about. So you've done this for organ trafficking. How did
Yes.
this come about?
Oregon. Yeah. Okay. So the Mark Croker, who was the deputy chief that I went to and pitched the idea of possibly, teaching a drama class, he went to Argentina on a police exchange and met this girl. And she needed, because he was American, the parents approached him and she needed an organ transplant. And he didn't know anything about it, but he got really taken with the story and with the parents who were on the street corners begging for money so that their daughter could get an organ transplant.
Oh, wow.
Nowadays, people on street corners with signs begging for money, you're not quite sure why they really need it. It could be a job to them, right? But this was truly parents that were really uh, in fear of losing their daughter.
Mm.
So he came back to LA and he raised money for her surgery
Wow,
and
that's
brought her
incredible.
from, yeah, bought her from Argentina to Canada, which was the cheapest place where we could get the surgery done. And she had a couple surgeries, and this was many, many years ago, maybe probably 30, 25, 30 years ago. Um, and, organ transplantation surgeries are a lot better now than there used to be. And they have a lot of medical uh, protocols that, allow you to have no rejection, or you might not die of the organ transplantation, but die of some complications. So unfortunately, she ended up dying um, of complications. And the parents said, with this money, we don't want the money back. With this money, we want you to have an organization to help kids.
Oh, wow,
And
that's incredible.
so he opened it up, and then I went to one of his dinners, and then I got hooked because
Couldn't say no to that.
yeah, and you
Yeah.
got all these young kids running around, happy because they had, a successful organ transplant, and so yes, I had taken a break for a little while, but then now I'm back, and we're having a dinner on September 18th. Uh, big fundraising dinner.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's really important. What our organization does is we raise money and help certain families, but we also, like if there's a certain machine or piece of technology that a hospital in a third world country needs, we will buy that item for them. So we do very various things.
That's really
Um,
incredible, saving so many people's lives by doing
yeah,
that. That's
yeah,
it's amazing to be involved in an organization like that, isn't it? Because it does it again it puts things into perspective of how blessed
yeah.
we are, and when you see these parents begging to keep their child alive, how horrendous is that as a parent to have to do that?
No, it's crazy. And we just don't realize what we have. And so I always look at, donating my time. None of the staff is paid at World Children's Transplant Fund, which is a rarity because a lot of these bigger organizations, everyone gets a big salary. Um, but we're a smaller organization and we all do it from the goodness of our heart. And,
That's the best.
yeah,
Yeah, because then the
it,
money's going to the people who need it,
right.
right?
Exactly.
Mm,
Exactly.
yeah,
You don't have a big operational cost.
no,
So,
yeah.
yeah, so I'm back in it again at that
Yay.
organization.
Come September 18th, did you say September
Yeah,
18th?
September 18th. Yep.
Incredible event. And so,
Hmm.
Valerie, I'm looking in your background and I can
Hmm.
see some incredible posters. Babe, Hard Candy.
Hmm.
There's two stories attached to both of these movies actually that you've told previously that I want our listeners to be a part of. Which let's start with Hard Candy. So
Hmm.
Hard Candy, you were casting Hard Candy, and you saw someone who you thought would be perfect for the role. And
Yep.
correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember you saying that the producers weren't stuck on this person, and you just kept fighting. Is this correct?
It's
Tell
very
tell
well.
us how this played out.
So I read this script and I thought to myself, I love this script so much. And I had done a worldwide, like almost a search for this character because she had to be she had to be old enough because of the material that was being covered in the movie. Um, because she's written as a 14-year-old. So we had to find somebody closer to 18 that looked 14.
Wow.
So, I went, I did my thing as a casting director. I'm going out to all my agent friends and, did a breakdown and did all that thing. I looked at every single tape that came in and I saw Ellen Page's tape. And I thought to myself, well, this is the easiest casting job I've ever had. This is the girl. This
So
is
you
what,
knew immediately.
yeah. Oh,
Why?
this is the girl.
How did you know immediately?
Well, because I looked at her physicality, number one, and she fit that. And second of all, her reel was amazing. And I just saw this is it. She's it.
What made it
So,
amazing? What stood out for
um,
you?
I don't know. I felt her strength and her vulnerability at the same time
Mm,
as an actor.
mm.
And um and she was doing a lot of good work in Canada. Substantial work. So when I came to the meeting, the first meeting, I said, "Hey guys, good news. I found your girl." And they looked at me and they go, yeah, who?" And I was like, "Ellen Page, this girl, watch it." So they watched the tape and, they were impressed a bit, but they were like, "Okay, well, what about Michelle Trachtenberg or what about this actor? The name actress?" And I just thought to myself, oh my God, are you serious right now, guys? So this material was very challenging, and especially for the male character.
Mm.
So, we made offers to name actresses for that role, and they all passed
Oh,
because this material it was hard. It's
yeah.
hard material.
Mm.
And then the guy character, we had a couple offers out and they passed too. And then we finally cast Patrick Wilson. And so the producer calls me up and goes, "Oh my God, Patrick Wilson. We got Patrick Wilson, but who's going to play the girl?" And I use a little bit of profanity and I, you know, uh what about Ellen Page? She is blank, perfect for it, like I said on day one of casting. He goes, really? And I said, yes. He goes, okay, okay, let me, I didn't realize at the time he was going to ask his opinion of his wife.
Oh.
And so, and so he goes, Valerie really thinks this is the girl and everything. She looked at the tape. She goes, absolutely. She's right.
Oh,
So ended
no.
up casting Ellen Page that way. But
That's incredible. And I think from memory, you mentioned that Ellen put work on hold too, right? She had her heart set on this role as well.
yes,
And
absolutely.
yeah, yeah,
She passed on a lot
she
of
knew.
things.
Yeah,
She knew that this was the role for her. And then
yeah,
after this, after Hard Candy, then that's how she got Juno.
right.
So,
That's incredible. Yeah.
yeah,
And Hard Candy was incredible, very difficult to watch, but
yes.
she was incredible in that, wasn't she?
Oh, she
My
was amazing.
gosh.
And I thought Patrick was a good match for her too.
Oh yeah, he was
Because he
brilliant.
didn't look like he was a bad guy, He didn't look like
Exactly.
the typical pedophile kind of
No,
guy,
not at all.
right?
No.
So,
Yeah, that's incredible. So
yeah,
it's
so
such an amazing feeling for you, Valerie, to know that you've catapulted somebody's career.
hmm
How
yeah.
does that feel for you?
It feels good, it's it's what, turns me on about my job.
Yeah.
Like when you can see the finished product and you fought for something or you brought it to somebody's attention, um, then it's like, okay, I do know what I'm doing.
Exactly.
You know?
Have you had a time when you've fought for someone and then they haven't panned out?
One time.
Okay. And were
And
there
no,
elements that
no,
kind
that
of
I fought for
contributed to?
somebody.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, the opposite.
Oh.
Like and when someone didn't, when I fought for somebody to not be in it.
Oh, okay. And then they
Yeah,
got
yeah.
cast?
And they got cast and they got
Uh,
from a lot of their stuff got cut.
I think
Yeah.
people need to listen to you more often, Valerie.
Absolutely.
Like also
Absolutely.
James Cromwell's agent, right? You had a
Right.
massive conversation with James
Yep.
Cromwell's agent for Babe.
Yes.
What happened with
And
that one?
well, on the day of, we had our director come out. Chris was flying out from Australia for like one day of casting.
Wow.
Okay. So of course I had to have, I think there were like 20 guys or something, that I had brought in. And of course, the one person that I wanted to get the job was James Cromwell. So around, I guess we had our session starting around 11. I get a call around 10 o'clock in the morning from his agent. And she said to me, Jamie doesn't want to come in. I said, what? She goes, Jamie doesn't want to come in. He doesn't know about this project. I said, Susie, did you read the script? And she goes, well, yeah. And I don't know if that's true or not. I love her, but I don't know if it's true. Many people don't read scripts. They just read the log line, right?
Yeah.
I said, because if he's cast in this movie and this movie is a hit, he's going to be a big star. I said, you get his ass in here.
I love it.
Those are the exact words. I said, do not cancel on me at the last minute. He's the one I see in this role, period.
Wow.
He goes, okay, 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 I'll get him in. I'll get him in. So, so, he came in, and ironically, he wasn't the director's choice. It
Oh,
wasn't Chris Noonan's choice. He was George Miller's choice.
wow. That's interesting.
Isn't that?
Yeah, wow.
So, and a Universal had no idea the expanse of this movie, of where it could go, because Universal was always greenlighting movies before checking with marketing. And um, I remember quite distinctly, I'm in the screening. They did one screening, Universal did, and it had parents and kids, and it was an array of people. And we, as a production, like Jamie and a couple of the producers, we all went out for like drinks beforehand, and went to the screening. I hadn't seen the movie. At this point, I was vice president of casting at New Line.
Oh,
So I'm like, I want to see my work. I want to see, how did this movie turn out? And the electricity in the screening room is one of the few times that I have ever experienced that, where I was kind of taken aback by the reaction of the audience.
oh, wow.
And
How
so
were they
after
reacting?
just this, they just reacted to everything in the movie. Like there was a whole
Oh,
huge reaction to
wow.
lines and things, and just were just so connected to this film. Um, then afterwards, we all, everyone clapped. We all stood up, and I was on the other side where Jamie was, and I looked over, and there he was, surrounded by so many people he couldn't even move, and people asking for his autograph. And I looked back and I thought to myself, okay, I was right.
Another tick.
Another
Yeah,
thing I'm
yeah.
right, you know? I
That's
tell people
funny.
to follow my lead,
Yeah,
please.
yeah. Please listen to
Yes.
Valerie.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah. I'm
so
not
amazing.
always
And
right,
does
but
and how did he feel about that experience? Have you had a conversation with him about that?
oh yeah, he was like, I got the biggest bouquet of flowers you have ever seen in your entire life. It literally filled my entire office.
Oh,
I'm not kidding.
wow. Wow.
He's such a wonderful, wonderful human being. And
Mm.
I cast him in Babe, the baseball movie too.
Oh, right.
And and when he came in to read for me, he brought me to tears. He's such a soulful, uh, connected, when he speaks, you just feel it comes from within his soul. And that's what
Mm.
makes him such a good actor.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so it was filmed in Australia, right? The film.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
why was the lead not an Australian? I know you love Australian actors. You've got a thing for Australian actors, don't you? Is
Yes, they
it?
do.
Yeah. Is is there a reason why it was a US actor and not an Australian actor?
Oh, you mean to play his role?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sure they might have tried to cast somebody from Australia,
Right. Yeah, okay.
but it just, he was just so physically right for this, you know.
For sure. Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
something very, James Cromwell's, I guess his lineage is very English.
Yeah.
So he looks very English, doesn't
He
he?
really does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I think
it's
his
no, you
I
go.
think his father was an actor as well.
Oh, okay.
Comes from a long line of actors. So,
Yeah.
um, and George Miller, he wanted me to cast this movie because I
Nice.
did some recasting on Lorenzo's Oil, which he
Oh.
directed, of course. But
Oh.
so and the whole story is he kept begging me to read this script, and then finally, he goes, have you read Babe? Have you read the script yet? And I said, I will read it.
It's under the
And then
pile.
yeah. And then when I was at page 5 and I was in tears and I said, I gotta work on this movie. And then I became the biggest cheerleader for the film. I was just like,
Wow.
you know.
It's
So
it's such an impactful film. Oh,
oh,
it is a tearjerker, isn't it?
it is,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, I love that film. It's incredible. So, yeah, so you have a thing for Australian actors. You really like Australian actors, right?
Yes, I do
What
love
what is it about Australian actors that you like?
it. I don't know, their talent.
Yeah. They're
But
talented.
I just, what I love about them as people is that they're very personable. They're very engaging. Uh, as and as performers, I think that comes out
Mm,
does in their work.
yeah.
Just their environment of where they're at. They usually have you know, lots of thoughts about social, ecology, environment. All of that stuff is very important. I just think that they have a lot going on. And I think when they become actors, I think they bring that with them, you know. I mean,
Mm.
um, it's almost like when you put your feet in dirt, somehow there's something about that that brings you you're a more grounded person when you're not
Mm.
afraid to put your feet in dirt.
Mm.
And I use that as an analogy, I guess. But um,
And I guess you can
yeah,
bring the grit too, the truth, the
yes.
rawness. Yeah.
And
Who,
when you think about they're also very funny and they have a sense of humor, and I think that all comes out in their work. So, and
mm,
they're trained.
yeah.
So that's another thing that they take their training very seriously.
Yeah, that makes a difference, doesn't it? Who are your
Hmm.
favorite actors at the moment on screen at the moment?
Hmm. I have so many, but
Who's bringing that groundedness, that grit, that raw, that truth that you're
uh,
seeing at the moment?
mhm. Let me see. I think well, I have to look back at the actors that I've admired through the years, and that would have been someone like Gene Hackman, for instance.
Mm.
Um, who is that person now? I'm not sure. Uh, but I think a lot of the actors in the past have had that have a body of work that I could point to and say, hey, yeah, that's one of my favorites. And
Mm.
of course, Jack Nicholson is one of my favorites. As far as the um the younger actors, I would say, I appreciate what um Billy Bob Thornton does in Landman. And I appreciate what Jeremy Renner does in Mayor of Kingston. I love,
And you've cast him before too, haven't you, Jeremy
yes,
Renner? You saw
yes,
something in him in the early days too, didn't you?
yes,
And
yeah,
another
yeah.
one that you saw that, you got to get this guy in.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And a lot of the young female actresses, like I love the girl from Honora. I think she's going to have a huge future.
Okay.
She was fearless um, in Honora. But I think sometimes we've lost sight of our film community because the film community, there's less films being made. We have more streamers, uh,
Do
more
you
than
think
ever.
so? Less films are being made. Is that because more series are being made? What's happening there? Why is that happening?
Well, we have a lot of streaming. The studios are interested in saving money. Uh, our our action films, um, are there's too much. It's too busy, too with lacking storyline, but somehow that does sell. Uh,
Do you think
I
that's
what
because it's epic on the big screen? Is that
I think it sells foreign. I think it's
right?
what it sells foreign more. So, like for instance, Sinners, I just saw the other night, and he's um, right. Ryan is actually owning his IP, which is unusual for a filmmaker, but that kind of gore and incorporating music into the film with this kind of vampirish storyline, along with the music is incredibly creative. And I think we have to do more of those films in order to get audiences back in the theaters. And I just worry that that's never going to happen.
Mm.
So
Are you
we've
seeing
got to.
anything on the table right now that excites you? Things that are in pre-production or even in conversation?
Well, I would like to see the Michael Jackson story, and I would like to see the
Is that doing the
uh,
rounds at the moment?
yeah,
Is it
yeah.
okay?
No, it is not out yet, but it's coming up,
Is it in production?
Yes, I believe so.
Oh, right. No, that's good. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so I think, biopics work. I think World War II dramas work in film, right?
World War Two dramas. You've recently
Yeah,
created one of these, right? Can you tell us about Dirty Bomb?
Dirty Bomb. Yes, it's a World War II based on a true story of the Jewish prisoners who sabotaged the B-2 bomb and in turn saved uh, millions of lives and also probably was a factor in the war ending because it was Hitler's last chance of winning the war
Oh,
was the V2.
wow. That's
I've written
incredible.
a screenplay now that is a longer version of that deals with Werner von Braun and a Jewish prisoner growing up in Berlin.
Wow.
And the war breaks out, and it's the relationship of these two men. One as one as a prisoner, and one is the designer of the V2 bomb. So,
Wow. Who do you
and
see cast in those roles?
well, Ed Spears is actually going to be Werner von Braun, and the Edo Samuel, who was cast in the short, is going to play the Jewish friend Aaron, and Hunter Doohan is going to be in it. Um,
Nice.
we've got a nice group. Alexander Petrov is going to be in it, so I've gathered a group of really good actors to be in this film, shooting in Serbia.
Oh, wow. When do you start shooting?
I hope by fall or the beginning of 2026.
Incredible. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. And when would that be on screens? How long do you
Uh,
think would it take to film
oh,
and produce?
yeah, probably late 2000s, 2026.
That's a pretty quick
Yeah.
turnaround.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Mhm.
And Hunter Doohan, you're managing him at the moment too, yeah?
Yes, I am.
Fantastic.
Doing really well.
What did you see in him? Why did you grab him up
Well,
as one of
he
your
was eight.
clients?
Yeah, 18 years old, just cute and eager, and got a scholarship to go on to university in theater. And he didn't want to do that. He wanted to train in Los Angeles. And I thought, yes, I'd like to develop his career, help him develop his career. And his father
Yeah.
was Australian.
Yeah.
Peter Doohan, who was a
Yeah.
famous tennis player.
Yep.
So he's very much connected to Australia. He's
Yeah,
got family.
exactly. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
incredible. Again, another
And so
Australian connection for you.
there you go.
You
I don't
can't
know.
escape it.
But he's coming out in season 2 of Wednesday, and I don't know if you saw him in Daredevil,
Yeah, yep.
um, latest Daredevil.
Incredible,
Yeah,
eh? Yeah, so
so scary.
incredible. Yeah.
He's so
It's
scary, and he's the
it's got
nicest
so
kid on the planet.
oh, and he's got so many more years of
Oh yeah,
incredible work ahead of him, hasn't
yes,
he? He's only just started. Is he
yes.
18, did you say?
He was 18. He's so older now, of
He's,
course,
yeah,
but
right, yeah.
yeah.
It's so incredible, isn't it? And again, another exciting client for you to see how that unravels and the beauty and the grandeur that he brings to our screens is pretty exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, totally,
Yeah,
totally
that's good.
excited.
So Dirty Bomb was based on a true story for you. You're
Yes.
a relative, right? Your uncle, was it?
Yeah, my uncle was in the Battle of the Bulge, and that's how we got the name Dirty Bomb because the GIs used to call those bombs that misfired dirty. So, like someone had tampered with them. And
Wow.
of course, the heroes, we still don't know who these 200 men were in the tunnel that actually did this sabotage
Oh, wow.
because they were hung shortly after that in the tunnel. If you can imagine the visual, 200 men being hung because they didn't want to tell on who was doing the sabotage.
That's incredible, isn't
That
it?
visual, that's in my screenplay actually,
Wow,
you
that's
know.
incredible.
Yeah.
It's a whole nother world, isn't it, Valerie? Like this being manipulated or told what to do and you don't agree with it. And so you're executing somebody else's plan that you
Mm.
know is creating so much devastation, and you don't have a say in that, and then you choose not to, and then
You die.
you're taken for that anyway.
Yeah.
It's just incredible. The sense of humanity, the lacking sense of humanity in that is just appalling.
It really is. And, with all the, anti-Semitism that's going on is just appalling to me, actually, because I feel like here it comes again.
Yeah.
And I agree that these universities need to, make it safe for everyone to get an education. And when that's not happening, you can protest, but this is a place of education. It's not right uh to put students in harm's way, or make them feel uncomfortable. Funny story that my dad used to be very adamant about, one of my many mom dad things that would carry me. And he would say to me, and to my brother and I, you guys are going to be dressed very well. And I don't care if I'm in rags, because I don't want you going to school and worrying about you not fitting in.
Oh, bless.
And
That's so
I look at that
beautiful.
now, it's like common sense. It's like, yeah, because if you're not, I'm not saying he bought me Gucci, I'm not saying that, although that would have been nice.
And why not?
Uh,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
I'm saying, we had nice clothes that we wore to school, um, and he didn't care if that meant he didn't have a shirt on his back.
That's the sacrifice he made for his children, right? That's incredible. And it's something that seems so simple, but he obviously thought that through. And maybe that's from his experience as well. Did he have a hard time as a kid?
I'm sure he did, because he
Yeah,
didn't come he was the only one born in the United States.
right.
So, I'm sure he did, because they didn't come to they came to this country with nothing.
Mm.
And my grandmother, and grandfather traveled quite a bit, almost 3 years to get to the United States, through
Wow, what a
Siberian
trick.
Express, through Japan, through, I mean, so many, Korea. They went all through trying to get on a boat to take them to San Francisco or to the United States.
Isn't that
And
incredible, that journey that people make to create a
yeah,
better life for their family? That's
yeah.
sacrifice, that's commitment, isn't it?
And when you were, talking about choices, the reason why there were 1,500 Armenian families that went to Japan, because there was a Armenian woman called Diane Epkar, and she happened to live in Japan. And her family had a business in India, and then they moved to Japan. And they looked to her as a savior, like, we're going to come to Diane. She's going to help us get us where we need to go. She encouraged most of the families to go back to Armenia, which actually was a mistake, because
Wow.
at that point, the Russians had taken over Armenia. That's why it became Soviet Armenia, right?
Oh, wow.
My grandparents decided they didn't want to go back to Armenia. They wanted to come to the United States. And
Mm,
but on the boat, my aunt died from starvation, because, I mean, we're talking about when they're traveling, they're not eating. There's no, you don't get any perks along the way, right?
no, there's no money, there's no income.
Yeah,
Yeah,
nothing.
yeah. Wow.
Everything was stolen from them,
Yeah,
taken from them.
yeah.
So my aunt died at 12 years old on the boat from starvation.
Wow.
So when my grandmother came to Fresno, she was in her 40s, and then she had my dad. So my dad,
Wow.
that much, it was like 20 years difference between him and his siblings.
Wow. That's
So,
incredible.
but
That's a
she was
tough
replaced.
life, isn't it?
Yeah, very tough.
Wow.
But she replaced my aunt. I'm sure that's why she got pregnant, was to
Right.
replace the one she lost.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah.
not really a good experience as a child either, is it? To be a
Right.
replacement child. Yeah. Well, it's incredible
But
how your father has, he made it his, I guess, project or his passion to make sure that you, as his children, felt loved and that you belonged. And I think maybe that sense of belonging is probably a big thing, right? Because you imagine leaving your identity. Like you're leaving your country, you're taking 3 years to travel to another country, which you know nothing about, especially then. We didn't have
Right.
internet,
Right.
there wasn't readily available information about this place that's bright lights, big city, where all opportunity happens. And then you land in that place and you realize it's not as great as people say. You still have
Right.
to work, you
Right.
still have to earn money, you still have to feed your children. So
Yes. Absolutely.
that's an incredible journey to get to that, and then to be able to provide for your children in your trauma, because
Right.
you've had all this
Right.
trauma as a parent, right? How do people do that?
Imagine. And we complain, being in this day and age, we complain about the littlest things. And I'm just like, whenever I tell my children, I always say, just remember what your ancestors had to do to get here.
Yeah.
So do the complaining. You're strong. You're made of strong stock. Don't, don't waste your time complaining. Just,
No.
pick up your boots and let's go,
Yeah. If they got through that, we can get through what's playing
Yes.
out in the world right now. Yeah. You have a saying, I'm going to read this here. Oh yeah, fear is not in my realm. Do you think this has come from this as well? Like, where has this come from? Do you never feel fearful?
Sometimes at night, if I'm going to my car at night, I might look around and just, I get a little,
That's a fair call.
yeah. But then, I don't feel fear when of course, I always think about my children and I'm, it's a constant little fear button in that, where you're always like, are you guys safe? Are you this? Are you that? But as far as like choices that I've made them, I always feel fear will kill your, will kill your ambition. Fear will kill your progress. You know, I always, your choices you make are not forever, right? So people are fearful of going here or doing this or making a choice or speaking up about something. And I I I don't really like fear. I'm very brave. I guess I'm, you know, my dad was pretty scary, like he could be very scary, but I didn't fear him. And he'd always say, "Look at her. She doesn't even fear me." My poor brother would be like frightened,
Oh,
you
you
know?
knew that it was packaged in love. Yeah, your dad was doing it for the right reasons. Have
Yeah.
have you had
And
a
then I
situation
didn't.
like it, let's say in work life or in your career where you've kind of had that inkling of fear and you've gone, no way, I'm just going to work through it and it's paid
Yeah.
off. Has that
Yes.
happened for you?
Yes. It's, you do sometimes get a little, can I do this or is this, you doubt yourself. And then I'm thinking, well, what is my alternative? Not to do something because you're doubting yourself? I mean, we're all human, we all doubt ourselves. And then I think, well, that's not going to happen because is it if I fail, I fail. But fail is, I think, good. Failure is good because then you figured it out like, okay, well, I'm not going to go down that route again, right?
That's a great way of seeing things. Yeah. It's a learning, isn't it?
yeah. It's learning and by trying. Those
Yeah.
that don't try, like how many people have gone through their life and said, I wish I could have done this. I
Yeah.
wish I would have been an actor. I wish I would have done this. And I always say, well, it's never too late.
Exactly.
It's never too late.
No.
So, go for it in life. God, our life is, they always say life is short. I think live your life the way that you want it to be. Imagine it. Imagine your life and live it. Try to get there. You know what I mean?
That's incredible. And then also the
Yeah.
fear. I mean, the fear is usually of something that hasn't happened.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. It's something we
Exact.
imagine to play out. And so if we step into that story of the imagination of the thing playing out the way that we think it might not go in our
Right.
favor, And then we don't do it because of that. That's
I know. It's
crazy.
silly, really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. I love your advice. Thanks, Val. So I'm going to do a quick fire, rapid fire round. So I'm going to ask you a question, and
Mhm.
just the first thing that comes to mind. Are you ready for this one?
Yes.
Okay. What's the last show you binge watched?
The American Family.
The American Family. I don't know that one. What's it
Mhm.
like?
It's a crazy, crazy story about a little person getting adopted and the trauma that has gone on in that family because of it.
Wow, incredible. Put that one on our lists.
Mhm.
The most underrated actor, in your opinion,
Um,
or you can give us a couple if it's hard to name one.
I would say underrated. Hmm. I think I would say uh, all those people that don't have any foreign value. Uh, uh,
Oh, interesting.
yeah,
Because
that's
I
my
guess actors become a commodity, right?
right,
It's an
right. It's like
exchange, a currency exchange in a way.
yeah, like the thing is there's such a list of great actors. Um I think like Jeff Jeff Goldblum is an underrated actor. As far as his foreign value, that's what I deal with on a day-to-day basis on trying to get those values in actors. But I think
Mm.
all the actors that are working in film that that don't get an opportunity to be a lead in film because of their foreign value, you know.
Wow, yeah. And I guess there's a few of those. Hallmark
Rock,
movie or a Hitchcock thriller?
Rear Window.
What's that?
What did you say?
Hallmark movie or Hitchcock thriller?
Oh, Hitchcock thriller.
Yeah?
Oh yeah,
Oh, nice. Love it. Favorite
yeah.
one?
Rear Window.
Oh, Rear Window. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, I love that one.
yeah.
Okay, go to comfort food after a long day.
Ice cream.
What flavor?
Rocky Road, thrifty Rocky Road ice cream.
Ooh, nice.
Mm.
Red carpet glamour or film festival hustle?
Film festival hustle.
Oh, yeah. I'm not surprised by that. I'd
Hmm.
love to see
I've
you
had
in
a
there
lot of red
hustling.
I love, yeah, I love the challenge of that.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, nice. Awesome. Casting room chaos or quiet retreat?
Oh, casting room chaos.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
fuels you, doesn't it?
Yeah, I love that. I love that chaos. I love that crazy. The actors are waiting in the lobby, and what time, how many more minutes, and the actors are coming in. I love that. That's
Yeah.
just,
I can't imagine that energy, yeah, bring him in. Bring him in.
yeah. Yes.
Love it.
Hi, how are you? Sit
Yeah.
down. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. Biggest casting pinch me moment. Have you had any of those? Where you go, wow, this is incredible. I'm doing this.
Um, Sydney Poitier, I
Okay,
would say.
nice,
Sydney, yeah.
nice. And did you feel like, a bit fangirly or like,
Oh, absolutely. And another one would be Jimmy Stewart.
oh, nice. I've
And
heard he's a
I
really incredible human.
oh, yeah. I mean, I would never ever go to a dubbing stage where he was at, but I was like, I don't care. I'm going to meet Jimmy Stewart, and that's all there is to it. And we were working on, uh, yeah, this animated Fievel Goes West. And so I went in there, and there he is, tall, handsome, elderly, at the time. And then I was like, okay, so like, what do I say to him? And I was like, "Hi, I'm Valerie McCaffrey. I'm the casting director on this." He goes, "Oh, hi, hi." And then I was like, I feel like such a dummy, like, what else am I going to say to him? I just wanted to meet him.
Oh, that's
But
awesome.
yeah,
Beautiful. Weirdest audition you've ever seen? I'm sure you've got a few of these, have you?
Oh, okay. Uh, so I was working on a John Woo movie, Hard Target, and Hugh Grant came in. And John Woo is one of the most kindest human beings on the planet, like so giving, but he didn't, at the time he didn't speak very much English, so um uh he's on the quiet side, you know. So he comes in and we're reading Hugh Grant, and Hugh Grant is being an a-hole.
Oh.
And I
Uh-oh.
don't know why. Why is he being like this? Well, then I called up his agent. I said, this is embarrassing. John Woo, the nicest director on the nicest human being on the planet, talk about human beings. Hugh Grant came in and he was being terrible. And he goes, "Oh, let me call him." So he calls him, calls me back. He goes, "Oh, he was in character for the role." And I said, "Well, why didn't he tell us?" Because everybody thought he was being,
Wow.
you know, So I always advise this to actors. If you're going to come in, please advise them ahead of time. I'm coming in character,
Yes, yeah.
and don't take offense. I'm coming in character, so I won't be doing any chit-chatting,
No.
right?
Yeah.
So that was
Did he
one of
get
the,
did he get the role?
no.
No. Take Valerie's advice. If you're going for an audition, let the casting director know. If you weren't in entertainment, what would you be doing?
I would, I would be either a veterinarian
Oh,
because that was my second choice of profession. But then I realized I could never put down animals or be involved in that kind of thing.
no, that's so
Uh,
hard.
I would be I would work in charity.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Mhm.
Shows
Or
the
politics slash charity, like politics in order to get things through
yeah,
that
changing
is for
policy
the
and
good.
yeah,
Yes, that kind of
beautiful.
thing. Hmm.
Beautiful heart, Valerie. So
Yeah.
nice. Who's one actor that you haven't worked with that you'd love to?
I would like to work with Angelina Jolie.
Oh yeah,
I think I would like to work with her.
yeah.
Uh,
What do you see in her? What do you like about her?
she's she's incredibly talented, but also she's completely versatile. I think
Mm,
she can play almost any character and do it well. And I love the fact that she is her own person and she walks the walk and talks the talk.
mm,
Yeah, I would like to work with her. Um, yeah,
nice.
she would be amazing. And as far as guys, I would really I'd like to work with I would say like a Peter Skarsgård, someone a
Mm,
foreign actor, really work with him. I'm looking forward hopefully to working with Ed Spears, who's also very an amazing British actor. So we'll
nice.
see,
Yay!
you know.
Let's see if it plays out.
Yeah.
Watch this space.
Yeah.
And what's one piece of advice that you can give to actors going into the casting room to either not smash an audition or to smash an audition? So, what's the one thing they could do that could totally screw it up, like the advice that you just gave about Hugh Grant? And what's one thing they could do to nail the audition?
Well, obviously the one thing that comes into my mind is not being prepared enough for the role. Not reading the script, not doing your research, depending on what the role is, really diving in and doing the work and not just memorizing, going beyond the memorization process. Um, it's when I read actors and I read actors 10 times. I learn so much more when I read actors 20 times, 20 times with the same material over and over. And I begin to discover things as a casting director. So, can you imagine if, as an actor, you begin to discover things the more you do repetitious wise, right?
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
but I think you have to make, in this day and age of self-tapes, you have to make strong choices.
Mm.
Strong choices. You're never going to hit it on the nose. You don't know what they're exactly looking for, so you have to make strong choices so that they can so that they're able to see that they can pull you back,
I guess there's a real
right?
risk in that too, isn't there? Because if you're making a strong choice, you could be making the wrong strong choice, and it's so strongly wrong,
Right.
towards the opposite end of a spectrum of what the casting director, what the director, producer, the production company is looking for. And so it takes balls, but it's then if you're all in, someone like yourself, a casting director, is going to see your scope, right?
Right, exactly. And, and then, there were times that this was a very interesting thing that happened in casting is that if a material is written a certain way and you perform it a certain way, then the casting director will ask you to do it again with more emphasis on it. But then when you see the person that got cast and how they were directed, they read the material straight.
Right.
So
Okay.
so it's interesting on that aspect because if a casting director is asking you to do more, then maybe the next thing is you're asking the casting director, can I just read it straight? Because, like for instance, this happened on a Ryan Murphy series. So Ryan Murphy is the one probably looking at the tape and they're probably saying, okay, well, she did it both ways, but I don't want to do it that way now. I want to do it straight.
Okay.
And so it becomes more and more complicated, these
It's
self-tapes,
so
you know?
complicated. Yeah, especially
Yeah,
self-tape, right? Because you
right,
don't know what to put down. At least if you're in the room with the casting director, you can be directed to do it in a different way. But
right.
if you're doing a
Exactly.
self-tape, that's you're limiting your scope, I guess. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Is it okay for an actor to do multiple takes for a self-tape?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
1000%.
Yeah. So that's probably a good way just to show that scope, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Valerie, I've got three more questions for you that I ask all of my guests, and
Mhm.
it's to do with the podcast, Being a Wild, Wacky, Wonderful Human. What is one of the wildest things you've ever done?
Boy, I wish I could say some of them, but
Share the one that's most on the borderline of that.
well, I'll tell you a wackiest experience, okay?
Nice.
So I was working for Cheech and Chong and obviously we were doing the movie Cheech and Chong's next movie, it's called. And at the time, we were in a security one-off building off the lot, but near the lot. And a white man shows up and he's carrying a big plant. And I'm a girl from Fresno. I've never seen these kinds of plants. I just thought it was a house plant. And so, so uh, the bell rings, and of course okay, well, I'll let you in because it's a house. It looks like a new plant we're gonna get. So I let them in, and all of a sudden, a flurry of people began to surround this plant and found out that I had to, watch over this plant because it was a big marijuana plant that was going to be in the movie. So I had to lock it in the one of the small little rooms and guard the door to make sure the cleaning lady didn't go in there.
That's
And this was
incredible.
yeah, and this was actually when marijuana was not legal. Okay, you could
Yeah.
get arrested
Oh,
for this.
wow. Wow.
So at the time, that was pretty wacky because I was like, "What? I'm doing what?" And this is part of my like quote unquote job.
Yeah, yeah. The
So
plant
yeah,
security.
yeah, yeah.
That's so funny. That's beautiful. That's one of the wackiest things. What about one of the wildest things?
Okay, well, my daughter was in her early 20s and She was in music. She was a musician, and she met this musician, guitar player, at a club, and she liked him, and she told me that she was going to go on a date with him. So I always want to know, like, who is it? Where are you going? The whole thing, right? Um, so she told me who he was, and she was going to go and have dinner with him. Well, this he was quite a guitar player, right? And and Kiefer Sutherland was actually managing him, like was so into him, he was managing him. So okay, so my daughter goes out on a date with this guy, and and I'm checking the time. It's now 11 o'clock at night. She's not home yet. And it's not, she's in her early 20s. So, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. Okay, fine. So I go to sleep and I wake up the next, and I'm calling her and there's no answer. So I'm getting a little nervous. Okay. So the next morning I figured, well, she'll come home the next morning, right? No, Vanessa. So I'm like, what is going on? Now I'm getting panicky, right? And I'm calling her, no answer. So I said, oh, so he's managed by Kiefer Sutherland, this guy. So I call up the manager for Kiefer Sutherland and I said, this is the situation. My daughter is with this guitar player who Kiefer manages, and I want to make sure that she's safe. Where is she? Da 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 da. And they go, "Oh my God, are you kidding? Okay, we're gonna call Kiefer right now." So
Mama Bear at her best. I love it.
they called Kiefer Sutherland and they said, "Your this guitar player has Valerie McCaffrey, the casting director, her daughter, and she's looking for her and blah blah blah." So Kiefer ended up calling the guitar player, and here my daughter's having breakfast with him, having coffee. Everything is like wonderful.
How
And she'll
mortified was she?
so he's like, your mom is looking for you. Who's your mom? Oh my God. Okay. So yeah, that's about the that was
That's
about the wildest thing I've done. Yeah, one of the wildest.
that is so funny. And how did Vanessa take that?
He was appalled. She
Right.
goes, the guy hasn't called me since then. He's afraid to call.
Oh no. He's like, no,
I
your
go,
mum.
well,
I can't handle your mum.
you should have checked in, girl. You
That's
should have
so
checked in.
funny. I bet she
Yeah.
checked in after that.
Oh
That's
yeah.
funny.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
She knows. And she
That's
loves telling the story, but at the time, of course, it was
yeah,
outrageous,
exactly.
embarrassing.
That's so funny. Good on you. Mama Bear. Mama Bear looking after her cub pack.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it.
Beautiful. And my last question, Valerie, is what makes humans wonderful?
What makes humans wonderful is that when things go bad, they band together, usually band together to help each other through a tragedy. And that's being selfless and being being helpful and being that uh, loyal human being. We are all in the same realm, and to help each other just in our lives, I think that's what makes uh, humans absolutely wonderful. And if you can do that with creativity, even better. There's so many things that happen out of tragedy that end up being so much more than the tragedy that has actually happened. So I think the empathy of human beings makes humans wonderful. Because I think without empathy, we don't understand each other, and uh, we don't we don't move on in our own lives if we don't have empathy towards
Mm.
others.
Yeah, that's so true. And that empathy just takes us to another level, doesn't it? It helps us understand from someone else's perspective. We've talked a little bit about perspective today too, understanding how other people's lives have been impacted. Quite often we can be a little bit selfish, and then when we switch that around and go, like you said, with your kids, you think about your ancestors. What did they have to go through? When we can have empathy for other people, it really deepens our relationship with ourselves and with others. That's beautiful. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Valerie. And thank you so much for being on Wild, Wacky, Wonderful Humans. It's been an absolute honor.
Thank you for having me.
Oh,
It was fun. It was fun.
It's so awesome. And our listeners will have so many beautiful nuggets of wisdom from you. And I really appreciate that. And I know that they will as well. So thank you for being here with us.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you.
Wow, what an incredible interview. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with a few questions. What did you take from this conversation? Was it the way that Valerie sees potential in people and stories and moments? She often sees that potential before anyone else does, right? You would have picked up on that. Is it the way that she trusts her gut? She fights for the underdog or for the person that she knows is right for the job, even if somebody else doesn't. She sees right through things. Maybe you take from this conversation the story of her parents, the way that they turned a humble diner into a safe haven for young people in crisis. How cool is that? What can we do in the world where we're present for people, we're listening to people, and we're helping people inadvertently without anything in return? Is it her deep connection to her Armenian heritage and how the stories passed down became fuel for the ones that she tells today? What stories do we have in our lives that we can share that can provide inspiration for other people? This episode wasn't just about casting. This episode was about care. It was about being willing to really see someone and truly believe in what they can become. So I'll leave you with this. Who in your life needs to be seen a little more clearly? Where could you be braver in backing someone's potential? Maybe even your own. Valerie reminded us that courage doesn't always shout. Sometimes it quietly says, I see you and I stand with you. Take what you need from this episode. Let it stir something in you, and maybe let it change the way you show up for others. Or maybe the way you show up for yourself. Thanks for tuning in to Wild, Wacky, Wonderful Humans. If you had fun, share it with someone just as wild and wonderful as you. Stay wild, stay wonderful, stay wacky, and I'll catch you next time.